would love to. And we're on page 63, and I'm just going to let Leanne in. And so, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. Thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. And I do thy will always.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, we are in the chapter to wives, and we are on page 108. And what I'm going to do is, instead of going back one paragraph, we're going to go back to Rob. It's we're going to be talking about different problems that wives may experience in regards to their husbands, although this could be their spouses or partners, etc. So what we're basically going to be reading is those different categories that are there. So we're going to start back at try not to condemn your alcoholic husband, Rob, and then we'll just go through each one of these categories.
On page 107, Leo?
No, 108.
Oh, try not to, okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. Page 108, everybody.
Yep.
Try not to condemn your alcoholic husband, no matter what he says or does. He is just another very sick, unreasonable person. Treat him when you can as though he has pneumonia. When he angers you, remember that he is very ill.
Keep going. We'll keep going, Rob.
There is an important exception to the foregoing. We realize some men are thoroughly bad intentioned, that no amount of patience will make any difference. An alcoholic of this temperament may be quick to use this chapter as a club over your head. Don't let him get away with it. If you're positive he is one of this type, you may feel you had better leave. Is it right to let him ruin your life and the lives of your children? Especially when he has before him a way to stop this drinking and abuse if he really wants to pay the price. The problem with which you struggle usually falls within one of four categories.
Yeah, so what we're looking at here, I would be suspect of anybody that would take this chapter and use it against anybody as far as that goes, but I'm sure it's possible. What I would say is that we have got the situation where one person in the relationship is being very, very difficult, obstinate, and is basically filled with some anger, frustration, etc. And there are an array of reasons why they may be in that state. We're going to read each one of these categories and kind of just talk about them a little bit as we go along. So Rob will just read through each one of these separately. All right.
Okay. So type 1, your husband may be only a heavy drinker. His drinking may be constant, or it may be heavy only on certain occasions. Perhaps he spends too much money for liquor. It may be slowing him up mentally and physically, but he does not see it. Sometimes he is a source of embarrassment to you and his friends. He is positive he can handle his liquor, that it does him no harm, that drinking is necessary in his business. He would probably be insulted if he were called an alcoholic. This world is full of people like him. Some will moderate or stop altogether, and some will not. Of those who keep on, a good number will become true alcoholics after a while.
Yeah, so we've covered this particular type of person in the past with what we call the heavy drinker. I feel that what they're trying to describe here is the precursor to an alcoholic. It's somebody that probably, in my opinion, is showing more signs than not that they are becoming alcoholic. I think that some of the same behaviors are present with regard to this type of person. Obviously, where they might be embarrassing themselves or others in a particular setting, spending a lot of money on alcohol, etc. There's I think that between the heavy drinker and the alcoholic, both are a bit incensed when you actually call them an alcoholic. So, which is not an uncommon thing for people to do in these certain cases, and it's particularly hard to do that when you're right at the cusp or right at the door of walking through and becoming an alcoholic or not being an alcoholic. I think that this person, if they're at all receptive to a sit down and a heart-to-heart type of conversation, that there is at least indicated based on the description that they've got here, some amount of hope that this person could in fact moderate or stop for a period of time. And I think that that's at least one thing that's encourageable to the other person or persons that might be trying to intervene and actually save not only themselves, but also save this person from becoming a true alcoholic. Rob?
Type 2, your husband is showing lack of control, for he is unable to stay on the water wagon even when he wants to. He often gets entirely out of hand when drinking. He admits this is true, but is positive that he will do better. He has begun to try, with or without your cooperation, various means of moderating or staying dry. Maybe he is beginning to lose his friends. His business may suffer somewhat. He is worried at times and is becoming aware that he cannot drink like other people. He sometimes drinks in the morning and through the day also. To hold his nervousness in check, he is remorseful after serious drinking bouts and tells you he wants to stop. But when he gets over the spree, he begins to think once more how he can drink moderately next time. We think this person is in danger. These are the earmarks of a real alcoholic. Perhaps he can still tend to business fairly well. He has by no means ruined everything. As we say among ourselves, he wants to want to stop.
Yeah, I put an asterisk by this one, and the reason I did was because of the 4 categories. This one seemed to describe me best when I was at my, not necessarily worst, but it was certainly the 80% rule. So 80% of the time, I was showing a definite lack of control. I was admitting that I had a problem, even if I wasn't truly believing it at that point in time. I was absolutely positive that I had it under control and that I could do better. It just took a little bit more effort on my part, which was, again, I was basically lying to myself. Wasn't so much losing friends, but I will admit that I was drinking through the day, and there was, in fact, times where my business, the work I was doing was suffering, and I was finding that that was a good place for me to start my drinking for the day, which would be in the afternoon, so that I could get at least a couple of 3 drinks in me before I went and got home. And yes, I was driving after having had a couple of drinks, and which was also wrong. So point I'm trying to make is that this is definitely a person that's got problems. It's definitely a person that has crossed the line from that they're receptive to at least hearing light suggestions that maybe they have a problem. Okay, this is a person that is going to talk with you about it. They're going to probably promise. They're going to say that they're going to work harder, that they apologize for what they're doing, and et cetera, et cetera. And the last thing I'll tell you as far as this regard, is that this nervousness was an interesting thing for me. I was convinced that it was a tremor that I had, and I was taking medication for several years to address the tremor. And having even spoken to my neurologist that I had started seeing over this issue, I wasn't shy about telling them that I drank, but I probably described it. In fact, I'll just say I described it in such a way that I looked like I was a moderate drinker, et cetera, et cetera. So it wasn't something that they put at the forefront to say, hey, maybe your drinking is causing the tremor. But within about 9 months of me stopping drinking, I started realizing that the tremors were gone or were going away and weren't bothering me as much. And so I was able to ultimately get off that medication completely. And so I will just tell you that the long-term effects of alcoholism are definitely real. It isn't such that you dry yourself out within a couple of days and then you're all better, or within a couple of weeks, or even within a couple of months. In my case, one of the symptoms I had, which I now know, and I've talked to my neurologist, and we both agree that it was my withdrawal from alcohol that was causing these tremors. And I was masking or medicating the tremor with medication that would take care of that, would cause tremors to subside. So, so if I needed any kind of definition as to what a real alcoholic was, this particular category describes me, and I do believe that this is truly an alcoholic. But the second part of it is that, you know, I had symptoms, physical symptoms, that tells me that I had a real problem. So I just kind of emphasize this particular category because I think that this is what we might call a high bottom alcoholic, and somebody that still has most of their faculties in control. They still have a job, they still have their family, they still have finances covered and that type of thing, but they do definitely have a problem. So they haven't lost much, if at all, anything as of yet, but they are still in the category of being a real alcoholic.
Leo, I've cross-referenced he wants to stop with page 34 of the big book.
Okay.
And I'm just going to touch on this on page 34. For those who are unable to drink moderately or to pick and choose, the question is how to stop altogether. We're assuming, of course, that the reader desires to stop. Whether such a person can quit upon a non-spiritual basis depends upon the extent to which he has already lost the power to choose whether he will drink or not. Many of us felt we had plenty of character. There was a tremendous urge to cease forever, yet we found it impossible. This is the baffling feature of alcoholism as we know it, this utter inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or the wish.
Excellent.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Leo, did you want to say something?
No, I was just saying that's good. That was excellent.
Okay.
I'm glad we cross-referenced.
Type 3 now. This husband has gone much further than husband number 2. Though once like number 2, he became worse. His friends have slipped away. His home is a near wreck, and he cannot hold a position. Maybe the doctor has been called in, and the weary round of sanitariums and hospitals has begun. He admits he cannot drink like other people, but does not see why. He clings to the notion that he will yet find a way to do so. He may have come to the point where he desperately wants to stop, but cannot. His case presents additional questions, which we shall try to answer for you. You can be quite hopeful of a situation like this.
Yes. So you've definitely got somebody that has started to lose whole parts of their life, whether that be that they are missing work. They may have been put on report that they may have even lost their jobs. They are definitely in a situation where people have avoided them. You probably find them much like some people, including myself, where you wanted to be by yourself to drink, because after all, the reminder of that you don't have control over your drinking, and to the point that you now have ostracized or alienated anybody that might have been around you. You're probably not in a very good mood. I would surmise that the person that's not in a good mood in this particular category is probably upset with the fact that they know that they have a problem. They even admit that they have a problem, but they don't like the fact that they have a problem, and they're upset with others for not being there in support of their habit, their drinking, etc. That's just, again, just my kind of what I seem to be reading here. It clings to the notion that he will yet find a way to do so as far as stopping. That is still that last little bit, that last desperate effort to try and control their drinking like other people, and they just can't do it. This person definitely wants to stop, or at the very least, they want to be able to control it so bad that it consumes them. So this person is definitely crossed the line of gone beyond even the high bottom drinker. They're probably not necessarily at the low bottom, but they are definitely in free fall, if you will, with regard to the control or the lack thereof with their drinking. So,
But I love to hear, Leo, how it says you can be quite hopeful of a situation like this. No matter how desperate this guy seems, they're so hopeful for him. Why? Because I cross-referenced page 37 on this one. But there was always the curious mental phenomenon that parallel with our sound reasoning. There inevitably ran some insanely trivial excuse for taking the first drink. He wants to quit, doesn't want to do it, but something in his mind. As Bill from New Jersey always said, when our brain wants its candy, it'll tell us anything to take that. And no matter how insanely crazy it is, we end up taking it. But I love, again, you can be quite hopeful of a situation like this.
yeah.
Type 4, you may have a husband of whom you completely despair. He has been placed in one institution after another. He is violent or appears definitely insane when drunk. Sometimes he drinks on the way home from the hospital. Perhaps he has had delirium tremens. Doctors may shake their heads and advise you to have him committed. Maybe you have already been obliged to put him away. This picture may not be as dark as it looks. Many of our husbands were just as far gone, yet they got well.
Yeah, I think that the bottom line, the encouraging part of this is that people do recover from this state, this low bottom state. We're talking about a person that is probably constantly drinking 24 hours a day. The only reason that they're not drinking is because they probably are either out of alcohol and they're trying to figure out how to get it, or they've passed out and are, sleeping off the effects of alcohol. This is a dark time. There is nothing good that anybody feels. I can only imagine the frayed nerves, the fear that is in other people, and the bleakness of this particular situation. And yet, you try and get them help. They get help. There's something encouraging about that, but in the end, if they start drinking, even when they're driving home, it is definitely a problem. There's a lot of emotional effects to people around. We all kind of understand the person that's actually drunk all the time and everything. There's certainly physical effects of that, no question, but there are emotional and physical effects with the other people that are around this particular person. And even darker is when this person is truly alone and they've been abandoned even by their family. This is a rough time. It's a difficult one, and this one has got a deep hole to climb out of. But again, just as all of the other ones, there are some encouraging notes here, and that is that they need all the help they can get. And I'll give it back to you, Rob.
Okay. Remember when when the Dr. Silkworth talked to Lois and said that Bill was going to be committed, and if he keeps drinking the way he's drinking, he's going to die of delirium tremens or something like this. They also talked about Bill Dotson. He was the one who blackened the eyes of the nurses when he was a great guy when he wasn't drinking, but when he drank, his whole personality changed. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. These people were in and out of the hospital or the treatment centers. Yet, and I love how they got this, yet they got well. They recovered. Okay. So there is hope. Let's now go back to husband number 1. Oddly enough, he is often difficult to deal with. He enjoys drinking. It stirs his imagination. His friends feel closer over a highball. Perhaps you enjoy drinking with him yourself when he doesn't go too far. You have passed happy evenings together, chatting and drinking before your fire. Perhaps you both like parties, which would be dull without liquor. We have enjoyed such evenings ourselves. We had a good time. We know all about liquor as a social lubricant. Some, but not all of us, think it has its advantages when reasonably used.
Sure. And, this paragraph describes, the good times of drinking. It's what was important it's a good time. It is, yeah, maybe there's a little too much alcohol flowing, but there's good feelings, there's good conversation, there's laughing, carrying on, et cetera, et cetera. And bottom line is that this is certainly what most people want to have happen. It's the romantic side of drinking, if you want to call it that. It's what you see in the movies, two people sitting in big, I'll just describe my fantasy is that you're sitting in a big leather chair, you've got a glass of bourbon, there might be a fire, there might be just at least some type of, something on the horizon that you're looking at or whatever, and you're just enjoying the moment. Maybe it's at the end of a day of something that you have accomplished, you're celebrating, it's et cetera, et cetera. But it's that unwinding that happens. Time and again, I've tried to recreate that particular scenario, and for a period of time, and I've got little flashes in my mind when this was still something that I had control over. But perfect evening for me was 2 drinks at the bar, wine with dinner, and then after drinks after dinner. You can just imagine adding all of those up, but I was just in my element when I was able to be around 3 or 4 other people, and this type of scenario was going on. But I will just say that this is, while there could be excessive drinking in it, this is still one of those preferable times that we all kind of want to hold on to and maybe, remember almost to a T. So one of the things I do want to say, and I want to go back to just before we get to this, there is a 5th category, and that's somebody that has died because of alcohol. All right. So the 5th category, and it's one that I think that's important to note that doesn't really get talked about too much, but that is that the person has succumbed to alcohol completely, and they are now they're now dead. So just to kind of punctuate the seriousness of what we're talking about here. So, and that has forever effects on everybody else around that person, forever. Okay, Rob.
We're at the top of page 111, everybody. The first principle of success is that you should never be angry. Even though your husband becomes unbearable and you have to leave him temporarily, you should, if you can, go without rancor. Patience and good temper are most necessary.
Yep. And you basically, this is where it tests your ability to interact with somebody, is that you should not be angry. All that does is throw fuel on the fire. You have to have some sense of control over yourself. You have to take care of yourself. You have to be, you have to put some emphasis on your well-being. So there is an important factor there. Each scenario is going to be different, but at the same time, you have to remember that this person is sick. There's an assumption that they want to be well, and in order to get there, they need some help. And obviously, we're looking at it from the standpoint of people in support of the alcoholic trying to get well. But remember that we still have to have that alcoholic find that higher power and that inner strength to get better, as far as that's concerned. So yet again, we're talking about people need to be there to support the alcoholic in some manner or fashion. They still have to take care of themselves, and the alcoholic still has to find that higher power and ability to get that inner strength to rise above, the dark part of alcoholism. Rob?
Our next thought is that you should never tell him what he must do about his drinking. If he gets the idea that you are a nag or a killjoy, your chance of accomplishing anything useful may be zero. He will use that as an excuse to drink more. He will tell you he's misunderstood. This may lead to lonely evenings for you. He may seek someone else to console him, not always another man.
Yeah, okay, so let me talk, I guess the point here is that they say that, you should never tell somebody what they should do about their drinking. That is probably one of the hardest things that anybody that's a non-alcoholic can do. The human condition is going to take over. We've heard in the past, I mean, can't this person just stop drinking? The doctor said, if they took another drink, it would kill them. And here they are drinking again. There's going to be reminders. And as hard as it is, and I'll be one of the first to admit that people around me told me that I had a drinking problem. They were on me about my drinking. And I think that as much as anything, it was some amount of self-preservation on their part. It was a defense mechanism for them. I think that they truly believed, and I did in fact have a drinking problem, but I think that they were actually putting up some level of defense in support of themselves, in the fact that they were telling me that I had a problem and I needed to stop, or I either stopped or else. I mean, there is a lot of those things that happen. Another family member or friend says, hey, either you stop drinking or else. And that's probably a common thing there. I think more importantly here with regard to this is that there is always a way to approach a challenge, an issue, or a problem in a positive manner. And I think that if you were to try and let somebody know that they've got a drinking problem or what they should do about their drinking, I think that there are ways of doing it that show compassion, empathy, and support. And I think that that's I think that that's probably the better thing to do. The person that is the non-alcoholic pauses for just a minute and says, how can I say this in such a way where it's not going to be combative? And let's try to do that. I think that there's a way of doing that. So, Rob?
That's the $50,000 question right there, Leo.
Yeah.
Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. People tell us that, I think you're drinking too much. So what did I do? I isolated so that nobody could tell me that, hey, don't you think you've had enough tonight? Do you really need another one? Just isolate until, you're all alone. And then nobody cares anymore. Be determined that your husband's drinking is not going to spoil your relations with your children or your friends. They need your companionship and your help. It is possible to have a full and useful life, though your husband continues to drink. We know women who are unafraid, even happy under these conditions. Do not set your heart on reforming your husband. You may be unable to do so, no matter how hard you try.
Yep. That's definitely true. They need your companionship, your help, and that's kind of what we just talked about. So I won't dwell on this too much, but it is possible to be able to live in those conditions as long as things are okay. And it takes a special person. I mean, it takes a type of person, not special, but just a type of person. The person has to do it on their own. That is one of the things that is the hallmark of the AA program, is that the person themselves has to do it. But that means that if you've got a strong individual that is their partner, that they can probably weather a lot of the storm that's going to be happening. So, you can keep your kids wherever they are. You can talk to them at their level, at their particular age appropriate level, and with friends, good strong friends. I mean, truly good friends are going to understand to some extent and help and be supportive as well. Rob?
Leo, talking to an awful lot of other alcoholics, you find out that the family goes on. And what they do is you start being excluded from events. Why? Not necessarily because you want to, but because you're not in a position to partake with the rest of the family. We're going to get into the next chapter is the family afterwards, and they'll talk more about this, where reparations are made. And, we try to go back to the way things were before the person had crossed that invisible line and became an alcoholic, where, they were drunk most of the time. As I say, the family goes on. The woman takes over the role of chauffeuring the kids everywhere, making sure the kids get to their baseball, soccer, hockey, football, whatever sport it is. She takes over all those roles, and we're left isolated, sitting down in the basement, drinking, and it isn't much of a life. That's what brought me into the fellowship of AA. Not much of a life. My bottom brought me into AA because I didn't know where else to go. Obviously this person right here doesn't know where to go. They want to stop. Where do I go to do it? Because I've tried on my own and I haven't been able to. So, we know these suggestions are sometimes difficult to follow, but you will save many a heartbreak if you can succeed in observing them. Your husband may come to appreciate your reasonableness and patience. This may lay the groundwork for a friendly talk about his alcoholic problem. Try to have him bring up the subject himself. Be sure you are not critical during such a discussion. Attempt instead to put yourself in his place. Let him see that you want to be helpful rather than critical.
Okay, so this is a perfect paragraph, and I'm going to go back to Leo's threes. It is focus on the alcoholic, persuade them through involvement, and earn the right to advance. All right, this is a classic part of persuade through involvement. Okay, get them to talk about their problem, get them to kind of say the words that you're looking for. You want to say them, but you can actually maneuver the conversation in such a way that you're talking through it. You're listening to what they have to say, and you're empathizing with that particular thing that they're saying as far as that goes. So when I talk about those threes is that, you're focusing on this person, you're showing them a level of respect, empathy, and support. You're persuading them through involvement by getting them to talk about their problem, hopefully getting them to admit to their problem, and then getting them to start coming up with ideas about how they're going to get better, including getting with somebody that understands the program of AA and the 12 steps, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can then at that point be able to earn the right to advance. Maybe it is that you get them to call somebody that that is a recovered alcoholic. Maybe you get them to start going to a big book study meeting or an AA meeting, or at least the fellowship, so that they start to get themselves in a situation where they're around other alcoholics, recovered or not, but at least those that are trying to recover. So this is that point, and that's why I drive that point home in the way that you approach a person and get them to kind of go in the direction that you want them to go. And in this case, again, I'm not saying that this is manipulating somebody. That is a negative connotation to what I'm trying to say here. I'm talking about partnering. All right. There is a difference. All right. You are getting something for this other person. It's something for them. Now, you may benefit from it, but you're getting it so that it really truly benefits them, because if they get better, irrespective of whether or not you save your relationship or not, at least this person has gotten better and they're healthier and they'll live longer, et cetera, et cetera. You'll at least have that to hold on to. Rob?
When a discussion does arise, you might suggest you read this book, or at least a chapter on alcoholism. Tell him you have been worried, though perhaps needlessly. You think he ought to know the subject better, as everyone should have a clear understanding of the risk he takes if he drinks too much. Show him you have confidence in his power to stop or moderate. Say you do not want to be a wet blanket, that you only want him to take care of his health. Thus, you may succeed in interesting him in alcoholism.
Yeah, not much more to say to this. This is just a continuation of what I was just talking about. So we'll keep going, Rob.
He probably has several alcoholics among his own acquaintances. You might suggest that you both take an interest in them. Drinkers like to help other drinker. Your husband may be willing to talk to one of them.
Yep. And hopefully, again, we're just kind of talking through some of the way that you might approach and persuade them through involvement. And now we're at that point of earning the right to advance, because now you've got the attention of the person, and we're looking at ways to move forward, ways to become positive in this problem that they have with alcoholism. Rob?
And Leo, can you believe it? Here it's step 12. Drinkers like to help other drinkers. Bill, always,
Yep.
help other alcoholics with the solution. If this kind of approach does not catch your husband's interest, it may be best to drop the subject. But after a friendly talk, your husband will usually revive the topic himself. This may take patient waiting, but it will be worth it. Meanwhile, you might try to help the wife of another serious drinker. If you act upon these principles, your husband may stop or moderate.
Yeah, I mean, we all want a positive outcome, and it's very, very possible. So I think that the important thing here is that if you find that you've made some progress and things start to kind of unravel a little bit, I would say that it's time to move on to a different topic. One of the things about drinking is that if you can get your mind off of it, maybe you can, moderate or stop for a period of time. So jump into something else. Maybe it's time to make dinner. Maybe it's, let's go shopping, or maybe let's work on a project that we were going to work on, something to just kind of put the topic of alcoholism on the shelf right there at your fingertips, but move on to something else. And I think that you're going to find that there is at least some amount of goodwill that comes from that. The person is going to appreciate, the alcoholic is going to appreciate that you're not nagging on them, that you're not pushing them, that you're not dwelling on it to the point that it's becoming uncomfortable. But at the same time, it is an awareness that, we're working on this. It's time to do something else. We'll come back to it at a later date, whether that be, in a few hours or a few days, etc. But that is certainly something to be cognizant of with regard to how to talk about a person's alcoholism and what they might do in order to get help, find help, and move forward.
Suppose, however, that your husband fits the description of number 2. The same principles which apply to husband number 1 should be practiced. But after his next binge, ask him if he would really like to get over drinking for good. Do not ask that he do it for you or anyone else, just would he like to. The chances are he would. Show him your copy of this book and tell him what you have found out about alcoholism. Show him that as alcoholics, the writers of the book understand. Tell him some of the interesting stories you have read. If you think he will be shy of a spiritual remedy, ask him to look at the chapter on alcoholism. Then perhaps he will be interested enough to continue.
We're in this place right now where this is as good for a partner, a spouse, etc., as it is for a sponsor, somebody that's working with a newcomer. I mean, these are great examples of how to approach an alcoholic, and irrespective of whether or not there is an emotional or romantic connection. The fact is, you could be the person that they've approached, and these are excellent ways to open up discussions. If you think he will be shy of a spiritual remedy, ask him to look at the chapter on alcoholism, that type of thing. It's one of the first things that I think that a good sponsor is going to do is say, I've got a book. It's got a lot of good information in it. I'd like for you to read. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the chapter on alcoholism. I just want the first thing for you to do is to understand what it is to be an alcoholic, and let's talk about it, and that's a good way to get started with somebody, because you don't want to jump into, the spiritual experience. They're not ready for that just yet. You don't want to talk about God because we've already defined that kind of tends to turn people off and push people away. What you want them to do is just understand what it is to be alcoholic. I mean, that's the first thing that I kept asking when I was in the fellowship. How do you know you're an alcoholic? What is the definition of an alcoholic? Not once did anybody pick up the book and say, here's a chapter on alcoholism. Not once did they do that. Not until I got to the Keystone Group. So I just put it out there that, if you've got somebody that's interested, that would be one of the first things that I would do. And certainly your own style, but what a great way to do it. You don't have to have the answers. All you have to do is have the resources that have the answers. Rob?
If he is enthusiastic, your cooperation will mean a great deal. If he is lukewarm or thinks he is not an alcoholic, we suggest you leave him alone. Avoid urging him to follow our program. The seed has been planted in his mind. He knows that thousands of men, much like himself, have recovered. But don't remind him of this after he has been drinking, for he may be angry. Sooner or later, you are likely to find him reading the book once more. Wait until repeated stumbling convinces him he must act. For the more you hurry him, the longer his recovery may be delayed.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. All
Yeah.
right. So idea here is that all you really want to do is provide the resources, the information, et cetera. So you lead the horse to water and then just let them be to themselves, right? And if they decide that they're thirsty and they want to take a drink, then you've got an open door for you to start talking with them, et cetera. Obviously, we're talking about the alcoholic, not truly a horse, but the idea here is that you've planted the seed. You've encouraged them to read the chapter on alcoholism. They become aware of the fact that there are other people out there that were just like them that have recovered or are recovering, and things are better, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of what we're trying to say here. Because if you push somebody, just because you get a positive response doesn't mean that it's off to the races. I know that I had some time that I needed to kind of process. Remember, I was more of the educational kind of person with regard to spiritual experience. I had to kind of mull over this thing called alcoholism. I had to come to terms with my own behaviors, my own whether I had patience or not with it, but my struggle with actually admitting that I wanted to stop drinking. Even though I was finding myself isolated, I still enjoyed some of the effects that I was getting from drinking. So it's hard to put it down. It's hard to walk away from it. And it's hard to finally admit to myself, which is a major hurdle, is that you have a problem and you must stop, because you're not going to get any better. You're just not going to get any better without stopping. Big hurdle for me to get over when I was trying to stop drinking. And had anybody been pushing me, even enthusiastically, it would have bugged me. I would have pushed back on it, and I probably would have come up with the "I'll show you," the "I'll heck it," as I say. I'm going to drink anyway. Rob?
I've cross-referenced page 96 for the seed that's been planted in his mind. We find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who cannot or will not work with you. If you leave such a person alone, he may soon become convinced that he cannot recover by himself. To spend too much time on any one situation is to not deny some other alcoholic an opportunity to live and be happy. And here's a great one. One of our fellowship failed entirely with his first half dozen prospects. He often says that if he had continued to work with them, he might have deprived many others who have since recovered. That was Bill Wilson. And here's a must. Wait until repeated stumbling convinces him he must act. For the more you hurry him, the longer his recovery may be delayed. There's many musts in this book. That is one of them right there. If you have a number 3 husband, you may be in luck. Being certain he wants to stop, you can go to him with this volume as joyfully as though you had struck oil. He may not share your enthusiasm, but he's practically sure to read the book and may go for the program at once. If he does not, you'll probably not have long to wait. Again, you should not crowd him. Let him decide for himself. Cheerfully see him through more sprees. Talk about his condition. or this book only when he raises the issue. In some cases, it may be better to let someone outside the family present the book. They can urge action without arousing hostility. If your husband is otherwise a normal individual, your chances are good at this stage.
Yeah, I think if you've got somebody at that stage, the category 3, I think that it is going to take a special person or a type of person to cheerfully see him through more sprees. I think that that's just one of the nuances that we have here. Certainly people around a person in category 3 is obviously struggling, whether that's emotionally or otherwise, with the person. They've been embarrassed. The family wants to withdraw, the friends want to withdraw, etc. But getting somebody from the outside might be the best thing. At this point, they probably have heard of AA. I would be suspect if they hadn't at this point in time in their drinking and their alcoholism. They probably have been to a couple of meetings. Let's make some assumptions here that you've got somebody that's willing. They have, remember, category 3, they've admitted that they have a problem and they want to stop drinking. All right. That's another kind of precursor in this. So when you've got somebody that it's admitted the problem, they want to stop drinking, there is usually a willingness and a desire to pursue that endeavor. So we'll work with that. Rob?
You would suppose that men in the 4th classification will be quite hopeless, but that is not so. Many of Alcoholics Anonymous were like that. Everybody had given them up. Defeat seemed certain, yet often such men had spectacular and powerful recoveries.
Yeah, so I think sometimes these might be the easiest ones in a sense. So I don't think that just because they're, holed up in a bedroom, the blinds are drawn, the lights are off, they're just, completely obliterated from alcohol. It's sometimes at that point in time when they're the most receptive to recovering, because there's no question that they have a problem. There's no question that the family has been stricken by the ill effects of alcoholism, that there's no friends, et cetera, et cetera. And usually it's that one person that walks in, grabs this person figuratively and picks them up and carries them for a period of time and gets them the help that they want, that they are the most appreciative of it. So I think that it sometimes takes a low bottom type of issue or challenge to get to that point where you are ready to accept defeat, and you turn around and start working on getting better. Rob?
Page 114, everybody, right at the top. There are exceptions. Some men have been so impaired by alcohol that they cannot stop. Sometimes there are cases where alcoholism is complicated by other disorders. A good doctor or psychiatrist can tell you whether these complications are serious. In any event, try to have your husband read this book. His reaction may be one of enthusiasm. If he is already committed to an institution, but can convince you and your doctor that he means business, give him a chance to try our method, unless the doctor thinks his mental condition too abnormal and dangerous. We make this recommendation with some confidence. For years, we have been working with alcoholics committed to institutions. Since this book was first published, AA has released thousands of alcoholics from asylums and hospitals of every kind. The majority have never returned. The power of God goes deep.
Yeah, we're at this point where, a good doctor or psychiatrist, et cetera, is nice to have involved. I can tell you that due to some of the environmental things that I was exposed to in life, have me on different medications. And those medications actually are adversely affected by alcohol. So it is an important thing to have a physician or a doctor involved in the situation, because at the very least, and for example, I've seen a psychiatrist, not because of anything that would be psychiatric. It's just that they understand the effects of medications and alcohol, et cetera, et cetera. So I review not just my doctor that I get prescriptions from, but I reviewed with a psychiatrist all those medications to see if there was something that would be as adversely affected. And certainly, the removal of alcohol is a major important factor in anybody's good health. But this is sometimes at that point that you need a doctor involved. This is so important. There's no way to kind of describe this any other way than to say that when you've got somebody that is in this bad a shape, there should be professional help involved in the situation. Don't try to go it alone with somebody like this, because obviously, and we've covered this in the past, and that is that the recovering alcoholic going through withdrawal is a very, very dangerous time for that particular person. And we are talking about category 4. So this person is far gone with regard to their drinking. And but like we just said, this is a person that has reached their rock bottom. They're ready, in a lot of cases, most cases, I would even surmise that they're ready to get better. No matter what it takes, they're ready to get better, and they're very, very receptive to that help, and they can do it. It's a struggle, it's hard, but they can do it. Rob?
You may have the reverse situation on your hands. Perhaps you have a husband who is at large, but who should be committed. Some men cannot or will not get over alcoholism. When they become too dangerous, we think the kind thing is to lock them up. But of course, a good doctor should always be consulted. The wives and children of such men suffer horribly, but not more than the men themselves.
Yeah, this is a tragic time. Okay, you've got to get this person, in a situation where they're being controlled and not out of control. The family themselves needs to be removed from this person, because in fact, there's probably something dangerous that could happen if they were around everybody. It really is a serious time. And this is one that I just would say that we all know that this is one that requires a lot of assistance and a lot of support, and professional assistance and support, to say the least. So let's go ahead and read this last little bit, and then we're going to stop for here.
Okay. But sometimes you must start life anew. We know women who have done it. If such women adopt a spiritual way of life, the road will be smoother. If your husband is a drinker, you probably worry over what other people are thinking, and you hate to meet your friends. You draw more and more into yourself, and you think everyone is talking about conditions at your home. You avoid the subject of drinking, even with your own parents. You do not know what to tell the children. When your husband is bad, you become a trembling recluse, wishing the telephone had never been invented.
Yeah. So this is a point in time where, there's the emotional toll, the psychological toll that it has on family, friends, etc., is great. There is just no way of describing it any other way. There's a lot of avoidance. There's a lot of hiding, and I'm going to say enabling. The family members will, cover for the drinker, the heavy drinker, the alcoholic and stuff. And so there's a lot of having to lie to other people about that particular person. And that in and of itself takes its toll on the person that's doing the covering up of this person. And, you yourself are going to be impacted or affected psychologically and emotionally in ways that is going to affect your own health. So I think it's important that you recognize that, and it's very likely that even the family is going to need some professional assistance as well. All right, we're going to go ahead and stop there for today. I'm going to ask Bill if he wants to say a few words, please.
Hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot for the meeting, Leo and Rob. It's a real good job trying to explain all of this stuff here, because it gets a little bit goosey because we're talking about a wife or a spouse of an alcoholic as opposed to the alcoholic himself. So sometimes it's harder for us to understand exactly what's going on here. And what I believe Bill is trying to do is trying to give some kind of suggestions or instructions on how to deal with an alcoholic, whether you're the wife of the alcoholic or the husband or the sponsor or anybody who has to deal with an alcoholic. And basically what he's saying is, don't fight with the alcoholic. Don't bust the alcoholic's chops, because the alcoholic's just going to use that as an excuse to drink more and more and more. And he gave 4 categories of drinkers here, and you can look through that and see which one your spouse or you or whatever fits into. And basically, the fix for it, whatever it is going through these 12 steps. Now on page 112, he gives some instruction to the wives. He says, meanwhile, you might try to help the wife of another serious drinker. That's AA's fix for anything. Whatever your problem is, you try to help someone else that's going through the same thing you're going through, and that helps you get through it. That's the point Bill's trying to get across here in some of this. So we can pick everything apart on what each person who drank, what they did, what they didn't do. We're supposed to try to help somebody else. That works for the alcoholic and for the spouse of the alcoholic or the sponsor of the alcoholic or anybody that's trying to work with an alcoholic. Basically, what this is, that this part of the book is actually the last part of step 12, practicing these principles in all our affairs. That means I'm supposed to try to help somebody if I'm the one who's doing this. And if I'm the one that it's getting done to, the other person is supposed to be trying to help me, because that's what makes us better people. That's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. Rob, we'll go ahead and close with the serenity prayer and then
You got it.
open it up.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.